Okay, so welcome to my follow-up from what I said I would post today, but I am going to be talking about how to set up field maps using the ArcGIS Online account. Now, this is as of November 21st, 2024. Usually when I post something, they immediately change it. So, so then nobody can actually follow along with what I'm doing. So we're going to do it this time. So I'm going to tell you that as of today, this is what is going on. As of later, it's going to obviously be uh, changed. So maybe it's going to be the same. Maybe they're going to do it differently. Maybe they'll come up with a new idea. It just depends. So everybody should have an ArcGIS account in order to do this. And so we're going to click into our ArcGIS account, and then you're going to sign in. And I'm just going to take a moment to pull that off, just to put in my account information. And so you're going to fill it out with your information. And then now it's back. So now you have your screen. So this is the introduction to the screen. And if you scroll up to the top, along the top, you're going to see content. So I'm just going to jump right into this and describe how to just get this rudimentally set up. So over here is where you're going to find folders. You probably have none, and you probably have nothing sitting here if you have never signed into this before. So this is your root folder or your home folder. You'll see when you're in it, it looks just like every other situation. So to create a new folder, there is this button beside folders where it says create folder. And I click that, and then I can create a new folder. So I can create my new folder, whatever I want to call it, and I can hit save. And then you're going to see that it shows up on this side. So I'm going to click it, and I'm going to go into here. Now, as long as I am in the folder that I want to be in, that means that any new item that I create is going to go into that folder. So here, now that I'm in the folder, I'm going to go to new item, and I'm going to click on new item. And I am creating a feature layer. And now just as some backstory on this, I am creating the feature layer in a very rough format. So anybody who's watching this, that is from the public and is a GIS professional, you'll probably get annoyed with me that I'm doing that. But for those of you who are my students that are just learning their little bit about GIS to start with, we're just going to put it all in one. Now, for those of you who are professionals, you probably want to do multiple feature layers because that would match your feature data sets, and then you can group things properly and look at that. So, but for my students, just do it all in one because it's so much easier. So we're going to click into that. We are defining our own layer. So I'm just going to press next again. And here's where I set it up. So for those of you who are professionals in this or like learning to be professionals, you will set up something for for planning, which is called a data dictionary. For my students, we have not done that because we're just kind of doing this as a fun test and fun assignment. So we're not going to do a data dictionary, but what we're going to do is you look at the area that you are collecting data on, and you're going to figure out what kinds of feature classes do you want to collect. So a feature class is a group of features that are of similar type. So something that I would use as an example is trees. Now, if you're in a park with a lot of trees, then obviously maybe you want to do groups of trees, and that would be a polygon. But in this case, trees for me is going to be a point. So I'm just going to leave this as a point layer. I'm going to click add, and then I am going to use another point. For example, maybe I have fire hydrants. If I can spell hydrant. So that's another point layer. Now, for those of you who are my students, you need to do 3 points as feature classes, and for 3-point feature classes, and then you have to do 3 lines and 3 polygons. I'm going to set up 2 of each just so you can see it, but I'm not going to follow through with everything of every one of them. So just make sure you have 3 points and 3-point layers, 3 line layers, and 3 polygon minimum. You can definitely do more, so you feel free to go for that. So an example for a line layer might be roads in my case. So I go roads, and I'm going to switch this to a line layer. So I click on that line and I change it to line. And then maybe I have sidewalks as well. and that's also a line. Then I have polygons. So where we are going to be located is on our campus. So I'm definitely going to have buildings. And that's a polygon. And then maybe I have parking lots. So a couple things just to note. I have a tendency not to use spaces or symbols in between my words. I just use um, uppercases, the capital letters. And the reason I do that is just really for simplicity, because between all the different softwares that I use, some are okay with seeing spaces, some are not. So if I just standardize it and everything does not have spaces in it, then it all works. So you might get an error if you have a space in one of the situations that we're going. If you get an error, just make sure that you get rid of the space. That's all it is. So we hit next. And it's going to come up to please name your layer. So this is the whole data set that we're looking at. So I'm going to refer to this one as my park data set. Just like that. And you notice that there was that warning saying, hey, there's something already named that. Maybe just put your initials right after, because then it'll just keep it easy. Double check that it's going in the right folder. If it's not, you can click the down arrow and you can select the right folder that it's supposed to be in. And then you can add tags. So whatever you think that is important for your tags, you can just add them. You might just need to type and press enter. That is okay. And then you can also put in a summary about what your map or this particular feature layer is about. So this, you might want to describe it, just because coming up, maybe in the next few years, you may not remember what this was about, and this gives you an opportunity to see that. So once I have that all set up, I hit save. And I teach a lot of progress bars. So if I didn't teach progress bars, I probably wouldn't be teaching anything. So, so I'll just wait for this circle to keep going around here. So this is the easy part to set up. Obviously, it just was super easy. And I type a couple words and I put a couple drop downs. So now what I'm going to do is I end up in this area here on this page. So this is my data set overview. This is where we are. Now let's say I want to step away and I want to come back later. It's easy to get to. All I need to do is go to content, and this is at any point on any computer. Go to the top and you go to content. You will be in my content. And then you go to the folder that you want to find that you saved it in, and you should see it right here. So then all I do is I just click on it, and it will take me to that overview page. So again, if I didn't teach progress bars, I would be teaching nothing. So here is the overview of the entire data set. So we can see all the different layers. You should have at least 9. If you have 12 or 20, that's fine too. And then with my layers, I'm going to see that I have trees. So to access my layers themselves, I can click on the one, and it's going to move me from the data set into the feature class. So then what I want to do is, once I'm in this feature class, I want to go to data and then click on data. And then I want to add attributes. So here's the fields component. So if you happen to be using a data dictionary, then you can click on fields and you can just fill this all out. So now I have my trees. I know that I'm probably going to have different kinds of trees when I go out and collect it. So I'm going to click add. And then here is the name of the attribute. It's not the actual values of the attribute, it's just the name of the attribute. So I'm just going to call it tree type. Now I know that tree type is words, it's not numbers, so I'm just going to leave it as a string. And then I'm just going to turn off null values, like allow null values. The reason I turn it off is because then it forces me to get my data in the field. Because if I allow null values and I leave it blank while I'm in the field, I have to try to figure it out once I've gone back to the office. And that, when you collect 1,000 points, it becomes really hard to remember what, point 724 was. So if you turn this off, then it's going to force you to to like select something or put in something in that attribute. So then I can hit add new field and it's going to create that attribute. Now, if you're doing my assignment, you need 1 to 2 attributes for every feature class. So let's say that looks good. So I'm going to say I'm going to add another one. And maybe this one, I'm going to call it my crown width. When I say that, I'm just referring to the size of the crown of the tree, the top of the tree. And again, now this time it's not a string, it's actually a number. So I might want to paste it out, depends on the accuracy that I'm looking for, or I might want to just keep it general. But what I want to do now is I'm going to change it to an integer. So this allows me to put in 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm just going to round it to the nearest meter because I'm in Canada. I use metric, so that's why it would be in meters. And then again, I turn off my null values so that I am able to get that. Now, if you turn off all null values and you add a default value, then it just kind of defeats the purpose. So the default value is completely optional, but I don't recommend doing that for my students in the class because otherwise they're all going to be the same and then there's no excitement in looking at it. If you want to have decimals, you could switch to a double. So maybe I might have like 2.5 meters or 2.25 meters that I would use. So if I use double or integer, either is fine if you're going to be doing something like crown width. So I can hit add new field. And so now I can see the fields created. So now that I've created these, now I want to make it really easy. So in Canada, where I am right now, it is November, almost the end of November, and it is minus 10 degrees Celsius. The worst thing ever is to have to type out words. So if I can limit it to certain words, then all I need to do is select it rather than having to type it out. So that's what I'm going to do for both of these. I just want to be able to select something rather than having to type it all out on my phone because it gets really cold when trying to hold your phone and trying to type on it at the same time. So I'm going to click tree type. And so here I can see now this is all the information about the actual attribute. So I want to create a list. I want to say these are the only values that you can put in there. So I'm going to create a list. And in here, I can say for example, I have a deciduous tree. And then I'm just going to, you can use a code, which means it's like shorter. So for those of you in surveying, you would use a 4-digit code. But this is your attribute, right? So it's like a shortened version of the label. I'm not too worried because the words that I'm using are pretty simple and straightforward. If you have something that's a little bit more complicated, then you would use a coded value that's much shorter. So let's say I have 2 different kinds of trees. I have deciduous and coniferous in my area, and then I'm going to click Save. Now, if you really know your trees, you might have a list of the types of trees and maybe it all in Latin and all the other fun stuff, but I'm not going to do that for mine. So then what we see is that this is called a domain when we have a list of information that we can only select from. We can see that it's added now at the bottom. So now I feel that I have completed what I want to do for tree types. So now I want to go back and do fire hydrants, for example. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on my data set again, and it'll take me back to the overview page. Now I can go to fire hydrants and I can click on fire hydrants. It takes me to the overview of the fire hydrants. And I'm going to click data at the top here. And then I'm going to go to fields. So my fire hydrants, they're all labeled with a number. So I am going to add a field and I'm going to be labeled, and I'll just use it as labeled. So this is an integer. I know that they all have numbers on them, so I want to do that. I'm going to turn off my null values. I'm going to add new field. Now, I don't know what the range of the numbers are on all my fire hydrants, so therefore I'm going to leave that as user entered. Because if I put in a list, I'm going to really restrict it to what I can use. So then maybe another thing I can do is color. So we have our color. That can be a string. So I can uncheck that and add new field. Now, knowing your area first is helpful. Maybe the fire hydrants are different colors. If you have everything as yellow, then there's no point in having that attribute. Because if everything's the same, then what am I really trying to show? I'm not showing any relationships. I'm just saying that, yeah, this is the same thing over and over and over again. So if there is a colors. So again, if I want to add something, so I want to actually make it into something that I can select, I'm going to click on the attribute and I'm going to create a list and I can put in the colors that it is. So depending on the part of the world that you are in, you might have a few of them. Maybe there's a blue one, who knows? So whatever colors that they come in your area, maybe they're painted in multicolor, maybe you have some fun stuff there, and then I can click save. So that I've now created the domain for my color, and if I just look at my labeled, I can see that there's nothing there, so I can actually type in the number myself. It is limited to being an integer, so I cannot go in there and put in a decimal or try to type in words. It won't let me. So that's fine. So now I'm trying to limit the user error. So go here, go back to my data set, and now I can do the same with all of these. So for example, with buildings, I can go to buildings and go to data. I can click on fields, and then I'm going to add. You're going to see these attributes that are below. Those are not your attributes. They're information about the data, which is helpful for calculations later, but it's not really a true attribute. Like think of an attribute as something that really describes what is there. It's not the math that's associated with the location. It is what is there. So in this case, I'm going to have a building name, and I'm going to leave that as a string. I'm not going to allow null values. I'm going to hit add new field. So the building names now are going to be something that I actually have to type in. Maybe I might have number of doors, right? So I could put in the number of doors, and that one's going to be an integer because I can't have half a door, and then add new field. So uncheck the null values and add new field. So the building name again is a user entered thing, and it's going to be unique to every single building. The number of doors might have some sort of relationship. So maybe I can create a list on this one. So maybe this one, maybe there's only one door on each of it. Actually, I doubt there's going to be because that would be fire safety. So let's at least put two doors on it. Maybe there's 3 doors that are available, maybe 4. I can keep going until I have all of them that are filled in. So I go there. Maybe I can go all the way up to 10. So 9, and then 10, and so forth. So I can make a range, right? So I'm not limited to this. Now, if I wanted to put in a decimal, let's say I have 2.5, and I go to that, and it says 2.5, it's like, wait, it has to be an integer. You cannot use a period. So if you have limited yourself previously to not so much like to the wrong type of data, then you can go back and fix that. So I'm going to hit save. And then I have all of my values here. So if I find that I'm like, this is actually not the right thing, I accidentally put it as an integer and it actually needs to be a double, I would delete it and I would recreate it. Going back to the previous stuff that we did. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to set up 1 or 2 attributes for everything. So now you saw me go back to the park data set that's here. And so you would have all of your feature classes, all of them would have 1 to 2 attributes that you have created. And I would like to see a minimum of 3 domains set up, not for each of them, but just in total. But like I said, it's going to be minus 15, I think, next week. So it is so much nicer to just click on something than actually typing. So if you can type it out here in advance, then it makes life so much easier in the field. So now we've created the data, we've set with the data, stuck with the data. We also can access all of them through this layer. So I can go to sidewalks, for example, and go to the fields there. So if I'm good with wherever I am at, and I can go back to overview. The other thing I want to do is set up my settings. So the settings are going to allow me to create the map in the field. So I'm going to click on settings and then I'm going to scroll down. So you're going to see this feature layer hosted that's there. Make sure that it says enable enable editing. That's really important. Make sure that you have that and then also enable sync. So I'm just going to turn on the enable sync because I think that's important. And I think it's important for just the fact that like it seems to work better. But if you, let's say you end up offline, like Wi-Fi goes down or something and you don't have data, then you're still able to keep collecting data. So it will upload to the online world later after you get internet again. So just leave that on. It just makes your life so much easier. Now you're going to see I probably have other things here, but that's because I'm an administrator. So that's that's where I am at with that. So I click save. It's going to update. And once it's done updating, then I am good to go here. So I'm going to go to content and I'm back to my data set, right? So again, if you don't see your data set, go to your folder that you created and you're going to find it there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create it so that it can go to your phone. So I'm going to click on these three dots here and I'm going to open it up in Map Viewer. So I click on Map Viewer. And it will load with the progress bars that have disappeared. It will eventually show up. So there we go. Now it's back. Okay. So once you open it up in Map Viewer, you're going to see that it shows up under layers. If it doesn't, you can add here. Then I'm going to go over to the side and it says save and open. So I'm going to click on save and I'm going to say save as. And it's going to show up with this window. And now I'm going to save my map. So I'm going to give it a name for the actual map that I'm calling it. And then of course you're going to make sure that it's in the right folder. So always check that folder because otherwise it disappears on you. And you can add tags and you can add a summary so that you know what it is. Because later on in, a couple years, you might not remember what it was and be like, what was that? What was I doing? So the summary will be able to give you all the information. So we click save and the map is going to generate. Okay, so now you can see the name has changed up here and that it now should, if I go to these three lines and I go to my content, I can go to my folder that I created and I'm going to see this web map. So now this web map is here. It is actually available on my app, my Field Maps app that I have on my phone. So once it's there as a web map, then you can see it on your phone. So it has to be there. Now, if you are working in partners, so this is just a side note for anybody who's in doing that, you would go to these three dots and you would click it and you would go back to the map viewer, or you can go over here. So you can see that I've got this person and it's going to tell me who can actually see it. So this is another way of doing it. There's a whole bunch of ways of doing it. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to show up this and says, I can only see this, but maybe I want to share it with a group. So I will create a group and I'm going to click edit group sharing and I will find my group wherever it is to share it to them. So maybe there. And then I would hit apply, and then I would hit save. So what that's going to do is it's going to provide the opportunity for somebody, whoever it is that you're sharing with, that they are able to see it. So here's an error that popped up. So it says shared reference may not be visible. Please review sharing of these items. Okay, review sharing. Says all this stuff, and that's fine. So it says that it may not be visible, so click update sharing, and there we go. So now I can see in my symbol that it's being shared, and it's being shared to this group. So that's number one. Number two, you don't need to be in partners. Okay, so that's another thing. Now you'll notice that it said that it had to be a group. So if you do want to do partner work, you would go to groups. So if you're done with this and you're just solo, you're good. You don't need to listen to this last little bit. But if you are wanting to work in partners to collect the data in the field, you can go to groups and you're going to create a group. And then you give a short, meaningful name for your group, like it says. It's very descriptive there. So I could call this my park information group, whatever you want to call it. You can say whatever the summary. You can say, this is what I'm inviting you to help with this assignment, blah, blah, blah. You can add some tags to it to help it make you easier. And so now it's going to say who can view it. So I really only want my group members to see my work because it's my school work, or maybe it's my work. So, or maybe it's something that I want my organization to see. So just my work people. So I would choose one of those. So always check that one because that one always sneaks by, right? You don't notice that. And then who can be in your group? So you can add extra people outside who have a ArcGIS Online. That's a possibility, but they need to have an account with ESRI in order to do that. So I'm just going to stick with my organization, and then I'm going to say by invitation because that's how people would join. So it just kind of automatically shows up in their thing, in their account, and then who can contribute, say everybody, and who can view it on the managers. You may not see this because that might only be me. So whatever it is, just leave that, then that's okay. So then I click save, and it's going to create this group. So this park information group, whatever you called it, that's what it's going to be. Now to add people to this group, I click invite members. And so here I can search people. So I can put in whoever it is. I can choose all kinds of different names, and I would just click add member to the group. And let's see if I can do this. He's one of the instructors. So we'll say that. We're going to add members to the group. And so now it's added that person to the group. And I can see that there's two group members over here, and it's just the two of us. So another way that I can share it with my partner, if they're like, I can't see it, there's also a link that you can send them and say, here's the link, click on the link, and it'll add you to the group. So that's another thing that you can do. So you got to set up the group first before you can add them to your map. So if I go back to my group, or my content, I should say, go back to my content. Now I want to add a new group. So I can click on this one. And again, I can edit my group sharing. And maybe I want to remove that one. I don't want that person to see it, but I want the one that I just created. So I have my park information group. I'm going to share that, and then I'm going to hit apply. And then save, and it's probably going to be like, hey, you need to share your layer, because that's really what the last one did. So review sharing, update sharing, because I want them to also access that, and now it's there. So now it says that, oh, if I go here, it still says that it's viewable to him. So I'm going to remove, edit group sharing. Don't want that one. I'm going to hit apply and save. And then I want to make sure. So this one is interesting because it didn't actually update the sharing. So I'm going to click on that again. And I want to make sure that that one worked again. So you always go back and check it. Now it says it's already shared, so that should be okay. It's just not showing there. So if this is where you would get them to check, you're like, hey, it says that it's shared with you. Can you please check that it's actually shared with you, right? And you would do that through the online version. Again, you can check by clicking on groups, and then you can find out what groups you are actually a part of. So that is how you do this. That's how you get it set up and ready. And as long as you have this web map, it will be ready to go on your phone. So then you just log into your phone and you should see it in the account that you have. And then you can click on it. And then we'll explain how to do that next week in class. So that is everything that I have to share with you today. And I will look forward to seeing or talking to anybody. And I hope that everybody found this helpful.